Hello, back again on the Top Recap channel. This time I will tell a movie's entitled Wrath of Man. Let's get straight into the storyline. The story begins by showing two Fortico security guards on duty transferring hundreds of thousands of dollars to a bank in Los Angeles. As they walk a kilometer from the bank, a cement truck suddenly stops in front of them. As it turns out, the cement truck's workers and driver are a gang of armed robbers who will take all the money in the truck. After throwing a stun grenade, the two guards were removed from the truck.
Dispatched. Incoming ETA. 2 minutes.
However, in the process, shots were fired, killing the two guards and one civilian. The gang quickly fled the scene before the police arrived.
He shot 2 fucking guards, Elvis. He shot 2 fucking guards. Let's go! Let's go!
3 months later, a man named Patrick Hill was applying to be a security guard at Fortico after the incident. On that day, Hill's identity was checked by FBI agents working with Fortico. In his identity, Hill stated that he had worked for a security company in Europe for 11 years. Although Hill had experience, he still had to undergo a skills test by one of his seniors named Bullet. Hill then underwent tests on physical endurance, shooting ability, and how to park a truck. After going through several tests, Hill got a score of 70%, which is the smallest score to be accepted at Fortico.
Job. Let's get you suited.
After being accepted, Bullet introduced Hill to one of his colleagues named Dave, who seemed to dislike Hill.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a new addition.
Here you go, Shirley.
May I introduce H?
On that day, Bullet and Dave took Hill to collect money from the bank. Before leaving, Hill was given a weapon in the form of a low-caliber pistol, which of course made him protest because it was not equal to the weapons commonly used by robbers.
It's the Rockstar's first day.
All right, lucky you got a soft drop then. Try to keep your piece strapped.
Hill was also insulted by some of his seniors, who even bet that Hill would not survive in the case of a robbery.
Beat me.
Look off, Dana.
Guys, come on.
I'm under my feet, we'll get along just fine.
Bullet, Dave, and Hill then set about collecting money from the bank while giving Hill instructions on how to be a proper delivery boy.
Hunting for Pop-Tarts.
Pop-Tarts are not really my poison, Bullet.
House husband.
Base, this is Gamma, reporting back.
Long story short, Bullet invited Hill to hang out at the bar after completing his first assignment. This has become a tradition where if there are new officers, they must treat their seniors. Hill accepted, but before leaving, he secretly observed the ID cards of the workers as if he were looking for information.
The point of the game is to get the ball in the hole.
Point of a woman is to shut the fuck up, Dana.
Flat-footed limey? I shit him.
Maybe you should say that to his face.
Maybe I will.
While at the bar, one of the seniors named Sticky arrogantly wanted to pick a fight with Hill.
Sorry,
However, Hill did not take the bait. Instead, he gave Sticky money to buy drinks.
buy you a beer. Just make sure you drink it over there.
The next day, Hill and Dave were tasked with delivering $10,000 to a client at the docks. Meanwhile, Bullet went to the client first to ensure whether the client was safe.
It's a 10 grand drop. You should have been back 5 minutes ago.
However, after a long wait, Bullet did not return. At that moment, Dave and Hill heard the commotion over the walkie-talkie. Turns out, Bullet had been captured by a gang of robbers targeting the $1.2 million in the truck. Knowing this, Dave panicked and advised Hill to leave. However, Hill refused because Bullet's life was being threatened. Finally, Hill asked Dave to meet the robbers.
Now turn the key and drive, and I will tell you when to stop. Take the next left. Now stop the truck.
Once there, Hill began to observe the 6 robbers.
All right. They're serious. Shut the...
Dave, you just worry about putting your arsehole back in your arsehole. And leave this to me.
After that, he started throwing money bags into the back of the car. However, Hill accidentally dropped one of the bags, and when one of the robbers got out of the car to pick it up, Hill immediately threw the bag while shooting the robber.
Sorry, pal.
Hill also started shooting at the robbers one by one with great accuracy. Even crazier, Hill faced the robbers very calmly.
Who is this fucking lunatic?
Hill then chased the leader of the robbers and managed to paralyze him. He asked the leader to tell him who he was working with, but when the leader refused, Hill killed him on the spot.
What did you say?
Meanwhile, Bullet and Dave were stunned by Hill's killing skills. After the incident, Hill was interrogated by 2 FBI agents who had no idea that Hill had such extraordinary shooting skills. However, Hill was humble and said he was just doing what he was supposed to do.
Kill or be killed. Seemed to focus the mind.
The 2 FBI agents then showed Hill footage of a robbery 3 months earlier that killed 2 guards and 1 civilian. They asked Hill to look at the footage in case one of the perpetrators looked familiar to him. However, Hill said that he did not recognize the perpetrators at all.
All right, Mr. Hill, we'll pick this up another day.
After Hill was interrogated, Fortico's manager, Terry, advised Hill to take a leave of absence to mentally calm down after killing the robbers. However, Hill refused, and this decision was supported by Fortico's CEO, who instead asked Terry to promote Hill.
They're inspired, so don't punish him. Promote him.
Meanwhile, the 2 FBI agents report to their boss, Agent King, that Hill is the most feared man in the United States. Instead of giving directions to arrest Hill, Agent King ordered them to leave Hill alone. He reasoned that Hill would eventually lead them to find the perpetrators who killed 2 guards and a civilian.
Listen, there's a reason why I chose you two, because we have the same priorities.
What you want us to do?
Not a fucking thing. Let the painter paint.
Let the painter paint?
At night, Hill, who was at the hotel, was visited by Christie, who gave him a document containing data on all officers at Fortico. The next day, the Fortico officers now consider Hill a hero. Who previously underestimated him, now they praise Hill's courage. Hill and Bullet were then assigned to deliver money to a bank in the city center. However, on the way, their truck was suddenly surrounded by robbers.
With us.
I can't fucking see.
Gamma to base. We have a code red.
As the robbers were putting exhaust fumes into the truck, Hill decided to get out, and when Hill opened his handkerchief, the robbers ran away in fear. This incident made Terry wonder who Hill really was.
Yeah. Turn back around and left.
I hear H is for hero.
Likewise, Bullet and Dave began to think that Hill was a legend. To answer curiosity, the story returns to 5 months earlier, precisely the day of the robbery at the film's beginning. On that day, Hill and his son Dougie were about to go on holiday. However, before leaving, Hill suddenly gets a call from his subordinate Mike, who asks for Hill's help to keep an eye on a truck carrying money. If the truck took the left-hand road, Mike's men would rob it.
Dougie's over here on holiday, and it's the only time I get to see him.
Yeah, and there's no danger to it at all. You can stand back a 1,000 yards.
To know the route. If they turn left or right, that's all you have to witness.
10 minutes.
And I repeat, no danger.
Hill then took Dougie to the reconnaissance site and asked his son to stay in the car.
Don't go anywhere.
At the dock, Hill noticed that the truck was taking the right way, which meant that Mike's robbery plan had failed because Mike had set a trap in the left way. However, another group of robbers appeared and started attacking the truck. One of the robbers then killed 2 guards and a civilian who turned out to be Hill's son, Dougie. When Hill tried to save his son, he was also shot by the robber.
Okay?
Hill later woke up in hospital after being in a coma for 3 weeks. He was told that Dougie had died.
Dougie.
After recovering, Hill meets his ex-wife, Jane, who blames Hill for the death of their son.
You killed our son.
It wasn't my work, Jane.
With his heart filled with vengeance, Hill began to search for the perpetrators who had killed his son. Hill even met Agent King, who became Hill's business partner. Hill then asked King for data on the perpetrators. Unfortunately, King has not been able to find the perpetrators. King believed that the perpetrators had skills in combat strategy.
If their names are on that list, you can do your worst. Just be mindful that I can only look confused for so long.
After meeting with King, Hill called his subordinates, Mike, Moggy, and Brandon. All three felt responsible for what happened to Dougie. Hence, Hill ordered them to interrogate all criminal groups in the United States. If anyone did not give the names or signs of the perpetrators, they would be tragically killed.
Understood.
I hear the train a-coming.
You're gonna tell us what we want to know. And it's been shook hard in the search for justice.
Mike, Moggy, and Brandon continue to interrogate all the criminal groups until one of the criminals leaks information about a criminal base that keeps women as slaves.
Be a good boy. Told me, son.
Let me fucking name. Gash Brothers. They're filthy fucks. And they have done trucks. But they ain't our men. That job was above them.
However, since there are no useful clues there, Hill kills the criminals and asks his subordinates to release all the women. After a few weeks with no leads, Hill decides to hunt down the perpetrators alone. He met Christie, a British spy agent, to get a new identity and apply for a Fortico job. Hill is convinced that an insider is working with the perpetrators, and to find out who the culprit is, the scene shows a few days before Dougie's murder or the robbery at the beginning of the film. As it turns out, the perpetrators are former military special forces led by Sergeant Jackson and his subordinates, consisting of Carlos, Sam, Tom, Brad, and Jan. Jan was the one who killed Dougie and shot Hill. Although they were robbers by profession, Sergeant Jackson still had a family and was respected by his men for being fair and wise. However, Jan, the most violent member, often defied Jackson's rules. On the day of the robbery that killed Dougie, one of the arrested guards tried to resist, so Jan was forced to kill both guards. Not only that, Jan also killed Dougie because he considered him an eyewitness.
The legs!
The scene then moves to the present. On that day, Jackson tells his team that they will carry out a robbery for the last time with a target of $160 million. This robbery will occur directly at Fortico's office on Black Friday when all banks send money to Fortico. Although Fortico was heavily guarded, Jackson claimed to have insiders willing to cooperate.
North of 150 million.
Ooh. How's that possible?
The depot. Black Friday.
Ooh.
Later that evening, Jackson and Tom were discussing the robbery plan. Tom is worried that Jan will betray him, but Jackson is confident that Jan will follow his orders. The next day, Terry instructed the officers to be vigilant, as they would be taking money from various banks in the city.
Black Friday, and the tails will keep ringing.
Let's get going, Agent. That's the last drop.
After some officers had taken money from the banks, they started back to Fortico, including Hill and Bullet. While on their way to Fortico, Bullet confessed to Hill that he was the insider who had given information to the robbers. Bullet advised Hill not to fight back to save his life.
Well, there's something I need to tell you. I helped him get into the cash truck game. I tell them which trucks to hit, and they hit them. You get me?
Yeah.
Bullet then drove his truck to an empty building where Jackson's team awaited.
We have 4 minutes to load.
The robber team wore bulletproof suits and quickly tied Hill's hands before heading to Fortico.
If you're a good boy today, you'll see tomorrow.
Arriving at Fortico, they started the action by pointing guns at the workers and putting Hill in a cell with Terry and Dave.
Don't you fucking make a sound.
Tiptoe, tiptoe, tiptoe.
That's all good and accounted for.
Take that weapon out. Get on the ground. Behave yourself.
They pretending to hold Bullet hostage to force the officer to open the safe.
Okay!
However, the officer refused and chose to fight back, resulting in a shootout.
Bob, open the gate or they're gonna fucking kill me!
Don't blow his head off.
Unfortunately, many officers were killed in the shootout. After getting rid of the resisting officers, the robbers took the money and put it in bags.
Copy.
At that very moment, the police came to block Fortico's entrance, but the robbers didn't care because the real threat was the SWAT team, which took 8 minutes to get to Fortico. In the chaos, 3 officers named Dana, Jack, and Diller decided to try to fight the robbers. But in the action, Jack was shot. Meanwhile, Hill took advantage of this moment to knock out one of the robbers. Hill then put on a robber suit and started killing the other robbers. Hill's heroic action motivates Dave to help him. However, because his cover was blown, Bullet then killed some of the officers, including Dana and Diller, and shot Dave to death.
Hey, boy, Sweat! It's Bullet! Bullet?
After that, Bullet joined Jan and Jackson. They then fled to the parking lot building. When they got there, Jackson was shot in the neck. Jan kills Jackson and takes the money to the abandoned railway line with Bullet.
Where's the Sarge?
It's not coming.
At the exit, Jan suddenly kills Bullet so that only he remains. Jan escaped in a prepared car and managed to trick the confused SWAT team into looking for the robbers.
Inside freeway 737, we do not have visual.
Later that night, at Jan's apartment, he was seen enjoying his loot. However, he suddenly heard a phone call from one of his money bag. When checked, the sound came from Hill's mobile phone, which Hill had tucked away at Fortico. At the same time, Hill suddenly appeared in Jan's apartment, leaving him shocked that Hill was still alive.
You here for the money?
Hill then threw Dougie's autopsy report, which revealed that Dougie was shot in the liver, lungs, spleen, and heart.
Cause of death, blood loss and trauma. Bullets C1 and C2 lacerated the heart. Bullet B1 penetrated the liver. And B2 ruptured the spleen.
Without further ado, Hill shoots Jan's liver, lungs, spleen, and heart, killing him in the same way Jan killed Dougie.
I want your liver. Lungs.
After taking revenge, Hill left the apartment and met with Agent King, who stated that Hill's job was done. Hill then got into a car with his subordinates and returned home.